This is Rally Round the Cannon, some thoughts on Princeton's history by somebody who should know better. The other day I was checking up on the progress of Aspire. You will recall that the current capital campaign, having had the luck to encompass one of the worst financial meltdowns in American history, marches on bravely until mid-2012. It will probably reach its $1.75 billion, that's B for billion, $1.75 billion goal by then. This is a good thing, although the magnitude is disorienting. So in trolling around for some solid mooring beyond the numbers, I came across two items that got me thinking. A mixed blessing, as we all know. First, there is the overall strategy statement of the campaign. Quote, Princeton aspires to be a great research university with the heart and soul of a liberal arts college, unquote. Hardly contentious that, and a running start toward raising an ungodly amount of money to be sure. Second, in the enumeration of the needs of the university, there's a significant $325 million capital item for engineering, couched in the terms of a, quote, sustainable society, unquote. This sounds green and positive, and I hope all my friends with $10 million sign on. But my question for today is different. What do these two items have to do with one another? As we celebrate the 90th anniversary of the engineering school, perhaps an exhibit of award-winning slide rules would be appropriate, the 90th anniversary of the engineering school and its many achievements, why do we have one? Megalomaniacal Harvard managed to do without one until 2007, believe it or not. And more pressingly, what's the relationship of, quote, the heart and soul of a liberal arts college, unquote, with Phobitor, the robot who peddles his fruitcake around the campus in the video you can see now on Paw's website. Before we start parsing fruitcake recipes in search of the truth, we should recognize for the sake of fairness that our never quite really a Presbyterian seminary has had a thing for bright shiny gizmos for a long time. The Reverend Witherspoon's reading of the 18th century Enlightenment not only included violent revolution, but a fascination for the practical sciences, resulting in the acquisition of the first Rittenhouse orrery in 1771. A great engineering achievement in itself, it also acted as a touchstone of, quote, natural philosophy, unquote, as science was then termed, a linguistic clue to the idea that how we think and how things happen and how things are built are somehow related, with each contributing to the educated man. This view recurred big time in 1832 when Reverend John McLean Jr., tellingly the son of a chemistry professor, brought in Professor Joseph Henry, whose claim to fame was having built the world's largest electromagnet for Yale. He promptly built a bigger one for Princeton and became not only the cornerstone of the physical sciences here, but subsequently the founding director of the Smithsonian. Even after going to Washington, he lent his prestige to the Princeton faculty, who as early as 1864 urged McLean, by then the college president, to establish a school of science. By 1871, new president, Reverend James McCosh, was convinced, and crucially, John C. Greene, a wealthy great-great-grandson of President Dickinson, had arrived. He backed McCosh to the tune of a couple million non-inflated dollars for a huge expansion, including Dickinson Hall, Chancellor Green Library, the new Green School of Science, the Joseph Henry Chair in Physical Science, and a chair in Civil Engineering. Charles McMillan filled the engineering chair and taught the first Princeton engineering course. Cyrus Brackett got the physics chair and created the School of Electrical Engineering, a graduate program, in 1889. The alumni of the expanding engineering courses formed the Princeton Engineering Association in 1912. 3 years later, Professor Frank Constant reorganized engineering and began to build a case for a school comprising multiple departments and a building to house it. Intriguingly, he made a pitch based on engineers as somewhat different learners, with the engineering department providing, quote, the kind of training best adapted to their psychological makeup and future needs. He also cited a common complaint that engineers as a class are notably deficient in expressing their ideas on paper, as he put it, and introduced English for Seniors, an innovation that put Princeton in the forefront of engineering education by actually grounding its students in the liberal arts, at least to the point they had table manners and could spell. This energized the trustees and President John Grier Hibben, yet another clergyman devoted to the applied sciences as it happened. And in 1921 they created the School of Engineering, with civil, electrical, mechanical, chemical, and mining engineering departments, and hired the enthusiastic Arthur Green from RPI as its dean. He quadrupled the number of students in his 18 years and oversaw the construction of the new engineering laboratory dedicated in October of 1928. Eerily, its prior home, the old Green School of Science, burnt spectacularly only 11 days later. The new building became John C. Green Hall and remains so today. By then, the school curriculum had gelled too, with a common first year including science, math, English, and foreign language, followed by differentiated programs in each department. The precise balance of the program, unusual for its time, was 29% arts, 40% sciences, and 31% engineering. By 1940, Green had quadrupled the number of engineering students to almost 400. His successor, Kenneth Condit, in his 14-year term, expanded it to over 600, including the new aeronautical engineering department. Engineers were by then spilling out of Green Hall and a host of semi-nearby nooks and crannies. Joseph Elgin succeeded Condit as dean in 1954 and set about a two-pronged attack that dramatically changed the school. First, he re-emphasized science as its basic technical foundation rather than technology and skills, which he felt should be learned in industrial apprenticeships. This brought the program even closer to the arts and sciences and the, quote, heart and soul of liberal arts college. And second, he developed an $8 million plan for a new building to house the burgeoning school and plastered the concept drawing on the cover of this, your favorite periodical. Serendipitously, along came President Bob Goheen, who designed the university's first serious capital campaign for $53 million to include the school, and construction on the new E-Quad on University Field began in 1960. The school quadrupled its space and expanded its library sevenfold. When it was dedicated 2 years later, Henry Held, the president of the Ford Foundation and a Princeton parent, was chosen by Elgin to speak. Only 2 years following Dwight Eisenhower's historic caution regarding the military-industrial complex, Held argued the case for liberally educated engineers who, quote, can work in important but neglected fields and create social markets for technological systems and designs that are as important as the military and commercial markets, unquote. The subsequent explosion of personal communications alone validates his point beyond contention. Elgin retired in 1971, with his scientifically oriented students now pulling down 50 PhDs per year. His successor, Robert Jahn, put the final piece on the table for Aspire. Only 10 years after Rachel Carson's Silent Spring and only 2 years after the first Earth Day, in 1972, Jahn introduced interdisciplinary environmental studies and energy conversion and resources programs to underscore the importance of engineering to everyday life and societal issues. And so, here we are, 40 years later, raising $325 million for engineering and a sustainable society. The very first sentence of the case presentation in the campaign literature points out, quote, at Princeton, engineering interacts in an unusually close way with the natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities departments. unquote. And while a few things have changed around the E-Quad, there's a magnificent new engineering library. 30% of the BSc degrees now go to women. I won't even get into what the heck ORFE is. The core of the school still focuses on the very liberal artsy idea of Princeton as training for service, not trade. It also corresponds stunningly to the philosophy of the school's guiding light, Joseph Henry, whose advice 150 years ago was to become an efficient, wise, and good man. I say efficient and wise because these two characteristics are not always united in the same person. Indeed, most of the inefficiency of the world is due to their separation. Wisdom may know what ought to be done, but requires the aid of efficiency to accomplish the desired object. I hope that in the education of your son, due attention may not only be given to the due development of both of these faculties, but that they will be cultivated in the order of nature, that is, doing before thinking, art before science. Unquote. That alone would explain a good deal about Phobetor and his fruitcake. Yours in virtual orange and black. This is Gregg Lange of the Great Class of 1970. Rally Around the Canon is a podcast from the Princeton Alumni Weekly online.